Hey everyone, Carl here with Literate Lessons, bringing you a deep dive featuring Zacian and Kyurem-White. This duo is probably one of the last hyper-offensive duos we're going to see. We've covered most of everything else that is considered very hyper-offensive like that. And what makes this duo unique is just the sheer output of damage compared to like Kyogre or Groudon or Yveltal paired with Zacian. I would put this on par with probably Calyrex Shadow Rider or other stuff like that. But before we get too much farther into this deep dive, make sure to hit that like button, ring the bell for notifications for when new videos go live. It helps us out a lot. Leave a comment down below what other deep dive pairings you want to see. We're going to run out of Zacian pairings eventually and probably have to venture into some uncharted territory here soon. So, as we all know, Zacian, very powerful, very strong. This thing hits like a truck. There's not a whole lot to say about Zacian, except for the fact that it covers a lot of what Kyurem-White struggles with really well. Usually carrying things like Play Rough or Behemoth Blade means that you can deal with the pesky fairy types, the pesky dragon types, and things like that. This makes it a great pairing with Kyurem-White, as Kyurem-White usually checks everything that Zacian's scared against. You get things like Earth Power and Freeze Dry, Fusion Flare, Shadow Ball, Flash Cannon for Kyurem-White, and so these two kind of make a great complementary pairs, I would say. Being able to check each other's weaknesses really well, and overall just put out a lot of offensive pressure. Looking at this moveset here, we've seen this set half a dozen times now, I think. This is my current set that I play with my Zacians. Enough speed to outspeed everything, trying to speed creep Pokemon like Thundurus and Tornadus. That's usually the big speed check, because you either do that or you try to outspeed things like Spectrier, which you have to sacrifice a lot of extra bulk for and a lot of extra damage, so you never really try to get that high. So that's just kind of things I like to check for there. I'd rather play the bulkier, more offensive variants and utilize things like other speed control options like Tailwind and things like that with the set. Behemoth Blade, Play Rough, Sacred Sword, all great stab damage moves. You can start to venture out, I feel like, into things like Wild Charge or Solar Blade, depending on your team. There's people who are experimenting with Fire Fang or Dig. I've seen Snarl here lately on Zacian as well. Just as like a usually super fast hit a Snarl, get a special attack drop on things that would normally attack into it, like Palkia or Kyurem-White or Kyogre or things like that. Getting to the meat and potatoes of today's episode, Kyurem-White is a very powerful Pokemon. One of those crazy fusion forms with Kyurem and Reshiram. This thing hits like a truck, has really good stats across the board, nothing below 90. When you're hitting like base 700 totals, you usually see high stat totals like this, but usually there's some kind of balance to it. There's no balance to like kind of make this thing bad. This thing is just all stats, hit as hard as you can, go to town. Base 95 speed is respectable in this format. That gets you to 161 max speed, which is fine, especially with things like Max Airstream, Tailwind, and other speed control options like that. It's very easy to get to things like 158, which outspeeds Landorus. You can outspeed Alecki. I think it's like 188 investment, which should put you at 139, which will outspeed under Tailwind. So definitely 95 base speed is not a terrible thing here. You can easily work around that, especially since you don't have to worry about investing a ton into special attack. Base 170 special attack puts it on par with Crown Zacian in terms of the special side of things, especially when you consider the coverage moves that this thing has. You have access to Max Steel Spike, you have access to Max Quake, you have access to Max Flare, you have access to Max Hailstorm, you have access to Max Phantasm, you have access to Max Rockfall if you want that, Max Strike, and with like Hyper Voice. There's a whole lot of moves that this thing gets access to that you can utilize to your advantage. Topping that all off with a base 125 HP and decent defenses in base 90 and base 100 means that this thing utilizes Dynamax really, really well. and really only has a few Pokemon to fear, which we'll talk about later on. Looking at movesets here, this first set here is one of my personal favorites, I think. This one is super interesting because we have enough speed investment at Timid to outspeed Landorus, so we can get a Freeze Dry off into it or anything like that before it has a chance to do something. This also will notably outspeed 252 Modest Palkia, so that's something to mention there. You also have enough special attack to just blow up everything with Life Orb. And one of the cool things we didn't talk about in the first part here was Turbo Blaze. Turbo Blaze lets you, it's just Mold Breaker. It's just a unique Mold Breaker ability. And you get to ignore all the abilities and things like that. So you get to blow through disguises, you get to hit Pokemon that are levitating, all that kind of stuff. So your moveset here is really kind of geared toward taking advantage of that. Freeze Dry is great because it lets you hit Kyogre and any other water types that could kind of sit in front of you. You have Earth Power, which lets you hit Zacian or like other Rotom forms, any kind of electric type. And then Fusion Flare is great for opposing steel types alongside Earth Power or grass types if Freeze Dry is not very good, things like that nature. There's a lot of scenarios where Fusion Flare is going to actually maybe end up being more damage than Freeze Dry depending on the situation. So we'll definitely keep an eye out for situations like that. And then we're running Protect here just to keep ourselves alive and help us kind of keep damage off of us. The next set here is an Assault Vest set. I got this set from our mod Swede. Our speed investment is enough to outspeed Regieleki at 188 investment. We are modest, so we are hitting like a truck, but we don't get that Life Orb boost, so we are running Assault Vest instead. Same moves, Freeze Dry, Earth Power, Fusion Flare, and then we're just running Dragon Pulse for Dragon Stab. Draco Meteor's a little bit iffy when you're carrying an Assault Vest. You're not really trying to deal a whole lot of damage at one time. You would rather kind of deal damage over time, so Dragon Pulse is probably better in this situation. You could also run things like Shadow Ball in that slot if you really don't want dragon coverage. You can run Flash Cannon. That's another move you get access to if you really want to play that bulky, beefy Kyurem-White set. Let's do a little bit of team building here with Kyurem-White and Zacian. So we're going to use our Life Orb set that we have here. I think this set is very, very powerful. Like I said, this outspeeds Lando, like max speed Jolly Lando, by 1, so that's really, really important. Also notable thing here is we do have enough special attack investment to really hit stuff, but because we're not max special attack, you may want to look at using other ways to increase your damage. But what's great about these two specifically is that their damage usually can't be ignored. There's nothing that resists ground, fire, and ice, and there's nothing that resists steel, fairy, and fighting. Like something somewhere along the lines, one of these two is going to be able to hit every single Pokemon super effectively at some point or something in that situation. Whereas things like Calyrex Shadow's big move is Astral Barrage, and that's can't be hit. You can't hit normal types with that, so you have to play Psyshock, and then you can't hit dark types with that. So you really struggle in certain situations with that Pokemon compared to Kyurem-White, who has things like Earth Power, Freeze Dry, Shadow Ball, Flash Cannon, all these other like special moves to just blow people up with. You could even run like fast Kyurem-White with like Icy Wind. I'm not too worried about that with this set though. I think we just want to focus on dealing as much damage as possible and just blowing people up. So Freeze Dry, Fusion, not Hyper Voice, Fusion Flare, and Protect. Those are going to be probably the best coverage moves you can run. You could run Draco Meteor in this slot. You can run Shadow Ball. You can run Flash Cannon, whatever you want to run in that last slot there. I think Fusion Flare is probably the best as it gives you ways to maybe like help reduce damage from Kyogre by changing it to Sun or something along those lines. As for support to go with these guys, the big key component here will be speed control. You're running a bulkier Zacian set here and a fairly bulky Kyurem-White with decent speed investment. But like I said, Kyurem-White's base 95 really wants that extra little bit of oomph there to get up to that number. So probably do something like Whimsicott would be something really cool. You could also do like Grimmsnarl, different ways to get to the end point here of you want to outspeed your opponents. Another cool thing that Whimsicott and Grimmsnarl both do is like Prankster Fake Tears. Granted, you're not hitting like a Yveltal with that Prankster's Fake Tears, but you can easily just use that, or even like Helping Hand in this slot. And you can use, and a lot of Pokemon get Helping Hand outside of the Prankster mons. Like using Helping Hand on most of your support Pokemons could easily help you get to that point where you need to be. A common thing we see with the Kyurem-White Zacian builds is sometimes they like lean into Venusaur because they have a good way of setting Sun with Kyurem-White Max or like with Torkoal. That's an option for teams to run this core here, which deals with a lot. Like, you run Freeze Dry to hit water types, but it's not super duper reliable because if you max it, then you're not really dealing with anything. And so Venusaur kind of deals with those Pokemon that these two can't usually hit. And then Torkoal's kind of just supplementing the Sun for Venusaur and Fusion Flare. The other options are just to play good stuff Pokemon. Very strong utility plus damage Pokemon. Things like Gastrodon. Gastrodon is great, I think, in this format. Having access to Storm Drain's really, really good. You can slap leftovers on this thing, and there's no real issue you're going to have here. Alongside that, you can do Pokemon like Rotom Heat. I think that's not Rotom Frost. Rotom Heat. I think this is a real good Pokemon too. This is another one of those underutilized Pokemon right now. As for items, you probably want to play a bulkier set. Something with like Citrus Berry probably, or maybe an Expert Belt. And beyond those, you probably want a Grass type to finish out your Fire Water Grass core. Good grass types, like I said, you can play Venusaur if you're playing Torkoal. You can play a Moongus if you're very worried about like Calyrex Ice, trying to beat that thing. I think this is a very strong pairing. You're not the fastest thing on two legs with these guys. Rotom Heat's a decent speed tier, like 86, but these two are definitely slower mons, so you're going to definitely have to play that speed game very, very well. If you're looking for faster, Rillaboom's a good option. I think Rillaboom's a very fine option right now in this format. You could play Assault Vest on it. You could play Citrus Berry here, Leftovers here, and this leaves your Focus Sash up for things something like Tornadus, Whimsicott, some kind of Tailwind user. Just having access to that Tailwind is really, really important, especially like Prankster Tailwind. So like I said, you got Tornadus. You could play instead of Gastrodon, you could play Suicune if you wanted to do something like that. You have Inner Focus there. You have Crobat, another Inner Focus mon. Hits Fairy types, which can be a problem for Kyurem. But since the most popular Fairy type is Zacian, kind of iffy on that one. Preferably, I do think Whimsicott is the best option here. Carries Focus Sash really, really well. You could always do eject button things if you want to do switcheroo things, but I think just carrying the eject button is really gimmicky. You could do like Helping Hand, Tailwind, Protect, and then probably a damaging move in like Dazzling Gleam or something that can't be redirected with like Follow Me. As for Rillaboom, you probably want to do like Fake Out, Knock Off, Grassy Glide, and then U-Turn. Rotom Heat, you probably want Overheat because you want fire coverage, Thunderbolt because you want that electric coverage. I like Will-O-Wisp on my Rotoms right now, and Protect. Honestly, you could probably make this Volt Switch and be fine. Especially since we're not running Nasty Plot. We want to be able to reset these overheat stat drops when we can. As for Gastrodon, you actually don't really need to run water coverage. Because a lot of what water types that are running around right now, a lot of the things that are weak to water are also just weak to ground. Minus like Charizard. But we have ways to beat that Charizard if we need it. I don't think Charizard's too terrible for this team. You do have things like Freeze Dry, which will hit it for neutral damage. You can remove the Sun, stuff like that. One of the cool things you could do here is like fake tears. Fake tears is a real big help when you're trying to beat up Pokemon that you normally don't get to take out. So a good lead with Kyurem like Whimsicott can easily blow up most Pokemon, especially since we have two other special attackers in Gastrodon and in Rotom Heat. Finishing out this set, you want Yawn and you want Protect probably. Recover is your other option there over Protect, but I really don't like having Yawn and not Protect, so I like this set here a little bit better. EVs, you'll have to figure that out on your own. It's not hard to do, but there's a lot of damage calcs you need to like run through and find out what you need. That's a good. Actually, we can't get to 220, so 210 would probably 211 would probably be best, and then probably some defensive bulk, a little bit of special bulk, get to a decent stat line, and then the rest in that, and then a point in speed. You can underspeed Cali Ice this way. You get to 48. If that's something you're interested in, underspeeding in Trick Room, I would definitely look at doing like something like this. We want to be probably modest. You could also go bold if you're really worried about walling Zacian with this thing. Rotom Heat. I can't remember what the speed tiers are for Rotom Heat. Timid. You want to probably get to like 146. That way your Tailwind plus Rotom Heat can deal with opposing Venusaur. That's another thing, is like if you're really worried about beating Venusaur with this team, you could do safety goggles. So that way you can never be put to sleep. Probably do a decent amount of special attack, a decent amount of HP. I don't have the exact numbers off the top of my head. But there's some values out there that somewhere that matter. I can't remember exactly what it is. I think Max Flare in the Sun almost OHKOs every Venusaur that you could ever worry about. This one I do know. You want to do, what is it, 196? That's not right. It's 160, 176 because you want to maximize your grassy terrain recovery. And so grassy terrain recovery is in 16th, so it's 160, 176, 192, and then like 20 whatever, but we can't get there. So it's like you try to min-max it and get to a decent stat line. 196 Adamant was the number for most Rillaboom before with Grassy Seed. And not Grassy Seed, Miracle Seed. So definitely have to keep an eye out for stuff like that. Probably put 4 there. Get you up to 100 on that one and do something like that. And then Whimsicott's fairly easy. Max special attack. You want to make sure you are at least outspeeding opposing Tornadus. Because that could be a problem. 184 is a fine speed tier because then you probably outspeed the majority of Zacians, because the majority of Zacians are still going to be in that like 183 to 184 range. But yeah, something like this would probably be great. I would maybe play around with these 3 a little bit. You could probably fill these in with other cores that help out a little bit more. And then depending on your preferred Tailwind setter, whether you want Whimsicott or Tornadus or maybe some other Tailwind setter that maybe isn't Prankster, things like that. So what exactly makes this duo so good? Looking over it, like on paper, it has a lot going for it. Like I said, Kyurem-White and Zacian both have great stats. They're really high in their base stat totals, base 720 and base 700 total. Leads to 1,400 points in just stats alone between the two, making them great when it comes to in terms like damage output, great speed tiers for the most part, great defensive bulking there. They have decent typings that don't really overlap a whole lot in weaknesses. Ice and Dragon and Fairy and Steel really, you only really have to ever fear is like fire type damage from like maybe like Weather Ball Venusaur or Charizard. Those would be Pokemon that I would keep an eye out for when playing this duo. And that brings us to the next point, is positioning with this team. When you're playing with Kyurem-White, it's hard to get into a correct spot where you can utilize your strengths effectively because there's Pokemon like Zacian running around. You're very much a glass cannon, And I don't think there's ever a world where you survive a Zacian hit without putting everything into bulk. I would be interested to see like what a 252 bold Kyurem can survive, if it can survive a 252 Behemoth Blade or something like that. Would definitely be interested in looking into that. But definitely have to position correctly and utilize your offensive well, because if you get caught out of position or leading correctly with this team, I feel like you're going to really struggle. You also got to make sure you're just like you have a good answer into like damage reduction situations. Screens is really good against this duo. Snarl, Intimidate, that kind of stuff is really, really good. What's great is you're not all in on physical or special, so your opponent has to kind of position for both. But on the flip side, you also can't be all in on one or the other and then get got by your opponent planning correctly. And with that being said, I want to thank you for hanging out and listening to me ramble about Kyurem-White and Zacian. Make sure to check us out on Twitter at @LRLessons, at MrMissouri25 for my co-host, and myself at Musical VGC. Make sure to go check out the Discord link in the description down below. We're getting ready to fire up our LRQ, which should be next weekend. So if you're interested in playing in that event, come join the Discord. We're giving away a bunch of free entries from the community that have been donated. So there's a bunch of free ways for you to get into this event. Otherwise, entry is $5. Best of 3 goes towards our invitational in the fall. Super excited about that. And remember to hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications for new videos go live. Leave a comment down below. It helps us out a lot. And with that being all said, have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you're at in the world. And we will see you all next week. Bye, everyone.